So if everything is all right, we should be live now. If you're watching this in a later moment, so YouTube will process this live stream and upload it on YouTube on the platform as a regular video. This is a live stream from Sunday, 21st of May 2017, which I'm going to talk a little bit about the performance or my take on the performance of Beethoven Sonata, Opus 14 number 2, part 2 and part 3. I've had a live stream on movement 1 2 weeks ago. I will link it here then in this video. So if you're interested in diving directly into the content, I will be talking a little bit in a few minutes, just addressing the people who attend the live stream and see if there are questions up front. I will be addressing them. And so within a few minutes, we dive into the content of this video, this live stream. So I will now try to access as always my own live stream to see if there are already people here and just saying hello to me, but I better, okay, shut down the volume, go down, and I think it's working, and from the first time, really proud of myself. So we had a hectical week today, all kinds of issues. Today, even on Sunday, so I had a concert in Brussels at 4 o'clock, 4 p.m. We just returned. I didn't want to skip the masterclass here live with you. So all is a kind late minute arrangement. So, but anyway, I hope you have a nice time together here. So Dylan, hope you pronounced your name correctly. Dylan Verdult. Your last name sounds Dutch. But welcome here, Robin. Welcome here, as always. So people will tune in, and if you have questions, just leave them in the chat. There is a little bit of delay from between the broadcast and the time you're receiving this. Can be 1 minute even. So just make sure that you have your question in the chat. If I miss something, Anya is in the chat as well. She's sitting now around the corner in the sofa. But anyway, she will yell at me and say, hey, you missed something. So don't wait until the last minute, because also on the end of the live stream, there might be a moment that I just close the live stream, not seeing that there is maybe even a delay of 2 minutes, and then I skip your question anyway. Kazuhiro Takino, hello to you as well. And then there is a name I cannot pronounce, cannot read the letters, but I've noticed your avatar on YouTube, so welcome to the channel if this is your first times here on Authentic Sound. So before we start, as I've done the last time, we have a little bit change in the Patreon situation, in the sense that the patrons, so if you're not familiar with that, there is a link here in the description box. The patrons are actually officially sponsoring our 3 videos a month, out of which the 2 live streams, the 2 masterclasses, and 1 regular video. So that's really great. That's a small community that's building. We'll have added other content as well for them. You will have different tier levels where you can opt in if you want to support the project we're doing, $1, $3, or $5. And on top of that, I'm sharing with my patrons the editing effect of the Bach partitas on which I'm working. I should be working more on that, but I'm working on those regularly. So that's a kind of community where in fact you could support us, and the patrons are supporting actually financially 3 videos and 2 live streams a month, which is really awesome. So we will have also from next month on 1 video call per month, so that with all the patrons you can just get a link and you get access in fact to me, just to chat or to ask questions more directly even than we do during the live stream. So that for the sponsored minute. Now dive into the Beethoven Sonata, which I did play actually on the concert. I'm going to cover my own face. I'm seeing it enough while editing my videos. Now it's just distracting me. I was playing it, and I think it had a huge success in that the people were very silent, and that's always very nice when playing clavichord. That's, you awaken a kind of silence and kind of presence that's very very special for clavichord. Not saying that the clavichord's main or best characteristic, best thing is that it sounds silent, but it really reaches that level. It evokes, so to say, the silence of a room. It's really, I cannot tell you that. You should witness that once. Once when the Authentic YouTube channel is so big, we invite you all to come to our place. Would be nice. Okay. We dive into part 2, movement 2. I have recorded it this week. It was not live streamed due to some issues that happened, but I will play you a few bars so that you know what music we're talking about. So I hope you have the scores. I think there is a link in the description box. I'm not sure now of this score so that you can follow. There is, of course, a score to be downloaded if you would like to see that on the Petrucci library very easily. Just type in Beethoven Opus 14 number 2 on ISMLP and then you'll find it. So it might be interesting to follow just on notation. You will see, I can show you maybe on the webcam if you have the score. Hope you see it like that. There is a common time indication, so a C with a stroke. So you would say an alla breve notation, and typically what we would say if we see such a time indication is that the alla breve is dividing the bar into 2 parts that you really should play in half notes, and that's really typical for the old alla breve, for the real alla breve. I will show you in a minute what the difference is, but the difference between a normal C and the C with the stroke, so the so-called quote-unquote alla breve sign, is not always very clear. So what I mean by that is you will see that, and certainly in this time, that composers are mixing those 2 bar structures, bar indications or time indications, mixing them with each other. So even if you go as far to Chopin, he has manuscripts with an alla breve sign and then with a C sign, and then he has an English edition. I don't know exactly which one of those. So either the French edition has the so-called alla breve sign, the English has a normal common time. So you see a mixture in that and also in this time. So the difference between the indication 4/4 normal common time C and the so-called alla breve time is actually only to be seen to make it's only you get a clear vision, a clear indication of what is meant just by looking at the notation. Always. There is a letter of CPE Bach, and I just mentioned because you will not find so much information on that, since also in the sources, these sources, whatever they are and whatever they mean, they speak about the alla breve sign. But for instance, Emanuel Bach, in one of his letters to Breitkopf, which is really interesting, these letters, and I have to cover it more. He writes that he has given a piece for print, and I don't know anymore which it was, but anyway, he says to Breitkopf, you know what, it was really last minute before Breitkopf started printing, you know what, change the C into an alla breve sign, so that people really not are taking the movement too slow. So it is a kind of indication that the tempo that's wanted is not on the slow side, but again, within the margins of notation. If you see, for instance, at the end of this piece, this is, by the way, this develops really nicely, and we're talking about that in a minute, to kind of acceleration. It comes to the end with 16th notes like this. That's really very unusual for an old type or a real pure type of alla breve. I have taken from my bookshelf just to show you an organ piece and just play a few bars from that. That's a real alla breve. I mean, an alla breve in the most purest sense. I will talk about that in a minute. But that, listen to the character of such a piece, is really different. F major fugue of the toccata. And it's very different. You feel immediately that this Bach fugue, that's, by the way, I've recorded that on organ. I think it's on my web, on the channel to be found, toccata and fugue in F major. But anyway, so this really large, majestic, big feeling, and a notation with only 8 notes. You have, in principle, 1 accent bar. You have, of course, the second accent. You have very few harmony changes per bar. And so you have also no 16th notes at all. Once you have more harmony changes, once you have more faster note values, then whatever time indication you give at the beginning, the piece slows down. So this kind of alla breve playing, and there is actually no discussion about that. It's not like the Beethoven and the Czerny numbers we're sometimes discussing in videos. You will find rarely an organist, and certainly not on a historical organ, that's playing this fugue much faster than in, let's say, 60 to 66, and maybe around that for the half note. But that's really taking the half note as a principal point of departure. So that's really the meter in which you're counting. You're counting in half notes. If you have a notation like you have here, it's way more dense. I can show you again. Hope you can see it a little bit, but it's a much difference. There's a big difference between the Bach fugue, really pure alla breve, and this one. This notation is much more dense, and the more dense a notation is, the more it suppresses on the basic movement. So 60 for the half note makes sense because that's the mesure ordinaire, but then for the alla breve. If you go to the mesure ordinaire for the 4, where the quarter note is actually the main note value to be counted or to be played in, then you have 60, that's the tempo ordinario for the quarter note. So also here, it's andante, that's on the third part. You have the time indicator, the meter, you have the notation, and then you have the Italian tempo word, which is andante, which in fact kind of contradicts the indication of the C of the alla breve side, because andante is not a fast tempo. It's considered until 1820, 1830. I don't know if Feti still is what he's writing about andante, but in the time Beethoven wrote his music, andante was considered to be the slow movements. Allegretto started the so-called faster movements. But it's a kind of contradictionary. And you often see that. You often see that in where the notation is getting more dense, you have a meter, a time indicator that kind of balances that, and then in combination with the Italian tempo word, that gives the player all the information, sometimes even more than you need, because it gets a little bit confusing then. So here, I really play, that's for me, in quarter notes. So I take the time as a kind of warning not to go too slow, and in fact I feel it a little bit as in allegretto, ma non troppo. And of course it's all on the edge of how you feel it, and Beethoven might have, I mean, we shouldn't be slaves of all those indications. At the end it's our own decision that we have to make, but if you take the stand as to come as close as you think, which is always imaginary, because we will never know. Beethoven will not come back and say, hey, you're right, between quote unquote. But then I think it's also fun to reflect on that. So, enough talking. I can show you why I think this music is clearly indicating to be wanted to play in quarter notes. It's already at the beginning, you have a 16th note. Okay, I get. Yeah, Elena, yeah, I'm playing from Schenker too, you know. I think it's correct. I don't have seen the first print, no I haven't, maybe a long time ago. I do have some older prints, let's check what they have. I think one or two here. This is the Czerny edition, let's see what he has. And I actually don't know. He has also the Alla Breve side. So beautiful. Beautiful, I can show you. I hope you see it a little bit. Now I'm taking this score in a way I shouldn't. And the other ones, I believe, are the Opus 14 number 1. And this is, by the way, the first one is a French edition, is a very strange. No, it's the Opus 14 number 2. So this is a French edition, very clean. Let's see what he has, or she, probably a he. There you have it. Normal comment time. Which page it is? This one. You see. So it is exchangeable, and although I don't plead for a fact, if you have a manuscript or a composer has written an Alla Breve sign, you should of course follow it, but it's not an absolute something. It is relative compared to the notation. That's always that. Harmony changes, fastest note values. Fastest note values are here in fact 16th notes, so then we know that we are not in this pure Alla Breve form. He starts with a 16th note, which is remarkable. It's not. It's. Gives an accent on every quarter note. That's another indication. Also here, a trill on the last quarter note, which is of course possible if you play it at a real double Alla Breve speed, but it doesn't make you won't find that in the old Alla Breve fugues by Bach. Also not in the real Alla Breve pieces by Mozart and Beethoven or Haydn. For instance, in the 40th Symphony, G minor, first part, pure Alla Breve. Hammerklavier Sonata, first part, pure Alla Breve. So that's also interesting to mention. If you take the Hammerklavier Sonata, then you have there, talking about metronome numbers, it's Beethoven's own half note 138, which is commented by both Czerny and Moschles, and even also from Bülow, that it was too fast. But Moschles gives 138, but in the footnote 112. But if you then go to the Bach Alla Breve that I just played the fugue of in 60-66, then you see that the 138 is more than double as fast for what is apparently a real Alla Breve notation. So there must be either no connection to the tradition, or we just have to apply that metrical understanding, which I think makes sense. So if you go further here on the trill on the last quarter note, gives in any way an emphasis on that last note, which is somewhat contradictory to a real old-fashioned Alla Breve. Here you have it. 16th note. My tuning is a little bit sharp. I had a concert on Friday and I had to retune the instrument completely because it was a very warm space. So I hope you don't mind. Then you have syncopations in this. Which are really accentuating this quarter note feeling. So again, that's an indication. Also here. So here it happens too much. Sorry. You won't find that in a pure Alla Breve. Then here. If this wasn't for the harmony changes, then it could be an Alla Breve. but you get such a clear accent on the second eighth note that it again goes on the side of the quarter note take. I'm just talking about, if you tune in later on, about the notation and how to decide upon whether you play in this so-called alla breve sign per half note or per quarter note. So here you have an indication. The bass is indicating this. It's always C, but then you can bum, 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 bum. It's an unbelievable fun piece to play. And then you have the 16 notes. So that would mean if you would take the tempo of a real old alla breve like the Bach fugue in the toccata in F major, would mean that you have to double this. I think you have to double this. I think I'm playing around 60. I haven't checked for the recording, which I never do. Because at the end, if you are really working with metronome indications, and that's a big misconception, that if you would check your performances with metronome indications by Czerny or Moschles, those are the most famous pianists who gave of all works of Beethoven, Mozart, Haydn, and they really lived in the tradition. If you would check those metronome numbers, that it is a kind of poor imagination. If you really would play accordingly only, but if you do research, practical research, I'm not doing academical research, I just apply that and then reflect on that and see what the changes are that I might have to make. Then it's of course very good to try these things out, but at the end, within the margins of error, so to say, you have to let it go, because the piece has to become your own music. So I just check now. Again, my tempo. Around 78. Which is actually considerably faster than Czerny. Czerny indicates 66. That would be, we'll try that at the end. But again, for me, this is now also, I'm just doing this openly with you, this is a kind of a warning sign in the sense and I have other signs, so Czerny gives also 116, which is then for the 8th note. If you calculate that in another way, it's 54, 66, so that's way slower. And so you often read remarks of people. I can understand that's difficult to imagine that that metrical theory would really be strong, and I think it is. We would have to rethink a lot. But that metronome of Czerny was sticking in that speed on his piano. So it's our responsibility what we do with that information. But that's almost coming as close as to recording by those people, because indication of speed is really very important. And so what I then typically would do is try these metronome numbers for a few days out. So I play it a little bit faster. Okay, having said that, that's about the notation. I think we can go. I just check. Okay. So about the performance, what really is one of the key elements for me, is certainly the beginning, is the staccato indication. And there are actually two things. That's that, and the thing also is that you have to remember at the end that the 16th notes are coming. So suddenly the whole staccato piece is becoming very cantabile. So it's different from the beginning. And the notes should have a very big pulse, much energy. So I don't want to say that you have to play it forte, it's indicated piano. So, but the clavichord is really great in that because it's so direct. On the piano, and certainly in the modern piano, you have these heavy hammers that you have to throw against the string, and so there is a kind of delay effect. You give a kind of input of speed and weight into that hammer, into the key, and then it's transferred to the string. It falls down on its own rhythm, in fact, and it's the damper who is closing the sound, who is ending the sound. That, of course, on the clavichord doesn't happen, and that is a reason that you can have this very sharp, energized sound. If I really exaggerate, this will happen, Joy. I will have a very, very short relief. I give just impulse to the sound where it's great. Very slow. Or in the midst. So that's the salt and pepper that you add. If you were a cook, you have to add some herbs, some salt and pepper, and one would make that tomato soup with so much salt and pepper, and the other with another proportion. That's of course the great thing of having different musicians. But that's you have to choose upon. This is too short, and this is too slow. It's too friendly. Beethoven wouldn't have had this strich, this accent staccato marks if he would like to. And if you do that, the long notes become so fun. And also there, just wait, not of course too long, but as long as you can, and maybe a little bit longer. Then you get attention. And then you start seeing also the importance why he starts with the 16th note. Imagine he had started with an 8th note. It's much less. Then you come here. And now it is. Contrast, legato. But still in the same pulse. Also for the big chords, which is difficult because you have to give energy in the key and out the key. And then here. That's so funny because it will be returning often. Very cantabile now. The tuning is terrible. Then syncopas. And of course these syncopas need to have energy. That's difficult on the piano because you have only the sound to make. On the clavichord, of course, you can pull the sound over the. You can give a little bit of life into that, but they are important. So you have to find a way to really give this pulse because that's a new element. And now, beautiful third melody. Also here, you have forte, and then suddenly piano. You feel that there is already, compared to the beginning, we're very static, but nice. And I say again, I'm playing it a little bit faster than the metronome numbers, but the reason why I do that is because you get such a development. But that's not a strong argument. If I'm really serious, I should consider the slower performance as well. We can try at the end, but it gives a kind of pulse, and then you get this legato, and then these syncopations. And it develops so nice, and then it develops further here in this. And now listen. So that's a Beethoven. That's really far from the 19th century picture we have of the man, which is a kind of frustration and kind of anger. We've seen in the first movement how sweet that movement is, how really nice. And this is actually full of humor. I mean, if you have this so nice feeling of you, and then very nice harmonies. So here the trick here is to let your instrument resonate. If I would play it on the pianoforte, which I will, although I believe this piece sounds better on the clavichord than on a later pianoforte. So my pianoforte has that's not finished yet, but I've played this when I was in Ingolstadt with Lorenz Guardian, so on his 1820 pianoforte, and you lose some of this spiciness. But anyway, you have to find a way, and I think without pedaling. On the modern piano, I couldn't say. I guess on a modern piano it would sound too dry not to use your sustaining pedal here, as just giving a little bit of more pepper to the chords. But on the clavichord, certainly you don't need that, because you give pulse to the soundboard. Very even. Crescendo. And I'm sorry, I was talking too much. And also wait, just make a little bit of rubato, which is totally fine in that style at the end of the 18th century. We are really on the edge of 1800, so just a little bit. Then the funny chord, and it makes such a difference. If I would not do that, I can show you. Then you just continue, but now it's just being a little bit later than expected, and you will see if you perform the piece for a live audience, and also actually for you, but I can't see the reaction then. But they are surprised, because they are expecting it sooner. And if you do it a few times, they will know it comes, and then it gets funnier every time. Certainly accent on the 8th note here. And then the bridge to the cantabile 16 notes is great. So here, certainly more even than in the previous passage, the notes should be connected. So you have pom, 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 pom. He's also writing a bow with staccato dots. That's he doing also here, but it's really more important here. So I'm softening my staccato here. And here it was like this. And here it is like this. Rubato, a little bit of ritardando. And here it comes, opera. Great tenor voice. I play the left hand rather forte. It depends on your instrument. I really like that on the clavichord this tenor voice comes out so brilliantly, and it makes a contrast so much bigger between what was and what is now. The other thing is that the right hand is not just an ornament. You have there a melody as well. So I just exaggerate now because he's writing, of course, 3/16 with the 16th rest at the beginning, with the bow under the 3/16, so we clearly. But it doesn't mean that you can't have this accent at the top note. It becomes more tricky when you have further on. We will see that when you have actually two melodies in the accompaniment, and then it really gets not really fun. I just play you the segment, and you can hear it for yourself. Return to the beginning. Pianissimo. As soft as you can. And now softer ritardando. And those who don't know the piece will really get a shock, and typically the audience will start laughing from tension actually, because it's surprise at the end. So one final thing I have to, because we have the third movement to do as well today, it's for me now interesting as well to notice that I have taken a tempo which is faster actually than Jenny was indicating. We will try just as a closure, and I don't know if I will succeed, just 66, which is one of his tempi. That's for the feeling not so much slower actually. It's not so much in fact, and I hear. So I wouldn't have sleepless nights about this, and I wouldn't have anyway. But again, as I said at the beginning, if you are serious about taking the facts into consideration, which is, I think, if you try to come as close to those people, that's the reason why I spend so much time on my channel now talking about these metronome numbers, also because such research like Guardian has done should see way more daylight than it has, because it's so obvious. And as we speak, he has over 30, I think, sources who talk about this 2-second one thing. It's there. But those facts are important, and if you see that you are off of what those people are indicating, then you make a decision as a musician to proceed and to continue and just play it like you like, which is totally fine. And I think if I take a tempo of about 80 for the quarter note here, it's within the margins. But it's on the edge. And if you really are going to see a change in character and playing that needs time to develop and to sync, then it's time to reflect. And that's for me also one of those elements of, that's not a warning sign, but thing that I take into consideration, because you have to be, in a way, honest with yourself. And of course, we see even differentiations in tempo with journeys, so who am I not to make them? But the character of this piece, I think, is a kind of joyful, it's funny, it's full of humor, you should have time to do that, it's kind of very nice rhythmical feeling, not at all hurried, because it's also the andante element of that. So really steady, and if you can keep that with just small elements of ritardando sometimes, I think then this piece is a magnificent piece to play, even as a bis number, so on the end of a concert when people ask for a second thing. So just looking at the... Okay, if you have a question, I see some people have tuned in as well. Tasto Giusto. Nice, John. Nice to have you. And nice to also always nice to read your comments on YouTube. Really looking forward to that. Liam, welcome here. So if you have questions, leave them in the chat. Anya is saying something. You have to feel the alla breve, the half notes. Yeah, we've been talking on that at the beginning, that this is not an alla breve in the old sense. This is a 4/4 structure, and that these signatures of common time, alla breve time, is always connected to the notation, harmony, density, fastest note value, and things like that. So you can, when this over, this will be uploaded on YouTube. You can go to that section if you'd like to. And actually, alla breve, what you say is right. You feel it in every strong beat first and strong beat on the third beat, but that's in the common time the same. You have strong beat on 1 and 3, and weak beats are the 2 and 4. So it's the same thing in alla breve. But if you have the Bach alla breves, you have a really very strong beat at the first, and you have actually one very strong beat per bar. But then you have only 8 notes and a very open harmonic structure. So notation, bar structure, I'm talking so much on the channel about that, but for me, more than these metronome numbers, actually just giving access to that information on my channel, but the notation, the way a composer at that time thinks about, has something in mind that he needs to find a notation for, and it's so different than today. We just make a notation whatever. I mean, in modern music, that's how it is, even in 20th century music. But in that time, the feel of this misura ordinaire, the tempo ordinario, which is the normal tempo, was really there. So they knew exactly what they were doing, and it's very simple, in fact. Okay, then 3/8, and if Anya's listening, I could use some water actually. Well, she hears it. So the scherzo, which is this, again, it's easy to download. I don't know if you have a link in the description box. I don't know anymore if I have provided a link. So 3/8 bar structure, scherzo, which of course means nothing. The whole second part was also a scherzo. So allegro assai, we have so a clear 8-note structure, which is unique because if you have 2/4, remember we've often, I think also for the first movement, 2/4 often is being used as 4/8. There are some wonderful sources for that. Oh, thank you very much.
Okay, be careful.
I get a new one if I don't think so. Okay, so 3/8, which is unique in the sense that the triple meters have their 8-note structure. 2-4 often used as 4-8, again with the same thing as we were talking about the alla breve and the common time. If note values go faster, if harmony gets denser, then you come in another actually another meter. And in 2-4, when that happens, you come and you have actually a 4-8. So, but here we have a 3-8. And then we see what is the fastest note value. I see triplets here, triplet 16. So, and we have triplet 16s at the end. They are very structural. So, fastest notes value here structurally, because that's important. Sometimes you just have one string of notes, which is just an ornament, or an improvised ornament that's written out. Then of course that's not structural, and if that happens to be 30-second notes, then it's just an ornament, which is not influencing. What you really decide upon is the basic note value, the basic fastest note value. That's really important that you can read upon on actually. In Immanuel Bach, also Leopold Mozart, that you really know what's the fastest piece in the movement that you're going to play. So also at the end, but here it's more ornamentation. So triplets and 16th notes. A structure here where you have this 8-note structure that you have to follow. So if you go much faster, then you almost have a tempo feeling that you go from one bar to another, which is of course contradictory to the 8-note structure of the meter. So if you have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So it's very important that you feel the 8-note structure all the time. Once you over that, you have certainly a tempo that might sound wonderful, but is in fact not complementary or not in balance with the notation. That's like simple. And I don't think that composers at the time really overlooked that element. So here we have a special thing. I'm getting a little bit tired now, see. Again, it was a really long week and I had a concert this afternoon as well. So, but just go through that. Here you have a very special element, which is very funny. That's the constant shift of accent. So in fact, you start in a 2-8 bar structure, kind of 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Then here you have the extra third 8 note, tom, and then 3-8. Again, 1, 1, 1, and 1. Also for that, don't have to go too fast. So I don't see the 16th notes as an upbeat to the 8th note. So not like it's really with an accent. By the way, the bow underneath those notes indicate that there is an accent. So typically the notes under a bow, the first note receives or gets an accent. And it's up to you as a performer how big that accent would be. And then here, question mark. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So if you take 60 for the quarter note, 120 for the 8th note as a kind of tempo ordinario, I am around 136, 140, which is for an allegro movement quite okay. Then you have allegro assai, which of course increases the allegro element. So the speed indications, it's clearly speeding up a little bit, but at the same time it says it's very much allegro. And allegro on its own means only lively. So it has a tempo indications, but there are a lot of tempos which are faster than that. So that's always the question, how fast are you going? You can't... To my feeling, going over this is really hurting this feel of 2-8-3-8. Then it goes so fast that you... Okay, anyway, then you have this. And this is also, for me, one of those elements. We've been talking only about Mozart, who says you have in every composition, you have those places where you can really kind of smell that the composer is using the tempo he has in mind to have that particular place, that particular note, or that particular passage written. I mean, if you have an adagio, you sometimes see ornaments on 30-second notes. The composer is only doing that because he had a particular tempo in mind that allowed him to do that. So in every piece, Leopold says, you have a kind of maximum limit on certain places that you can, of course, play faster, but you can feel it's not meant to be played faster. And here I have that feeling also. If you do that faster, then the answer to this is a question of kind of static question. Gets a little bit lost then. Again, time to sound. And by the way, it's not slow now. This is fast. Because remember also that you have to hear all those notes. There are not a kind of sound cloud that you have and that you get in a kind of rhythmical pulse. These notes should be really perceived very clear, even if you haven't heard the piece before. And then it's a unity, Dan. It's a unity. So these chords, they of course are very strange. That's a scherzo-like. And then B major. Time. Time. So for me that's the right feeling. And now of course you come back. And then he continues here with a beautiful cantabile line. So he has again the 16 triples. By the way, sforzando on this 8th note, which falls on the second 8th note of the beat, of the bar. Pum, pum, pum. Pum. 2, 1, 2, 3. Again, there you have the shift 2, 8, 3, 8. It's wonderful. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and of course, this is of a magnificent expression. And if you hear it the first time, I do perceive it as a very nice harmony, but he comes back with that, and every time he comes back with that, it's more beautiful, it's more sweet, it's more a much contrast to the beginning. I mean, there's no real scherzo feel anymore. It's a contrast of the scherzo. Also here, top note is important. accent on the wrong beat. Here. And again, and so he continues. And then of course at the end you have this beautiful passage. There's one passage I have to mention that I really don't know yet what to do with the ornamentation. So it's this one. And then he writes a very strange thing I can show you. Where it is? It's over here. So he writes actually 32nd note and then a dotted 16th note, which is as I see it, a kind of written out short appoggiatura. You know, we have been talking about that with Mozart, and I have sometimes a feeling that where Leopold Mozart says the appoggiaturas, you write them in ornamentation notation, so small notes, and the grace notes, or the passing notes, you write them out, which is kind of strange because the appoggiaturas have often a mathematical value, which you actually can write in full notation. So Turkish March. For Leopold Mozart, this most probably is, but you can write 4 16th notes, which I did at the beginning of the 19th century, which led us, as from the 70s on, to say that the early 19th century editions were kind of crap because they translated the ornaments of the earlier music wrong, which is the question if they did, because they might have just changed the notation system, which you see in Beethoven's works, that here, for instance, this is as if we wanted to have here a short appoggiatura, meaning the appoggiatura is an accentuated, comes on the beat, and the short appoggiatura is not accentuated, which is very strange because how can you do that? And so I don't know really. I've just played something on YouTube which I like, but if you'd ask me what's really the meaning, if Beethoven wants you that to play exactly as he has written, or that's just an indication for something else, I actually on this moment don't know. So I've played it like that. So because it's strange if you have an accent on that. It holds back. And at the same time, if you give an accent to the 16th notes, the dotted 6, then you come in a pattern where you have the 32nd note before the 8th notes, and so doing something in between. That's for later study, research. I really didn't come out on this part. Also here, if you speak about movement and tempo, this just feels right. You can of course do it faster, but then you have to start practicing in a way that feels a little bit, yeah, it's difficult to say. This just feels like kind of speeding up because you're using these 16 triplets all the time in the right way, and it just feels right on the keyboard. Just have enough time to go. It's not easy, but it's okay. that ornament. Pianissimo or piano. Accent, accent, accent. It's not indicated, but of course you have an accent there because there he is playing with this counter accent which falls on the wrong beat, and it's written like that. So, and of course on a period instrument you can have the instrument sound fortissimo there because it's on a Steinway. On a modern piano I should be a little bit more careful because the instrument would push too much, but very nice here. So really keep here clear is a 3/8 structure that won the game. So the right hand is throwing the 2/8 structure against that, which is of course a funny element, but the bass is keeping everything together. So that's great music. So yeah, sometimes it's just also a matter of feeling. Why are you playing in the movement that you are playing in? Sometimes it's very clear. Here I think with those counter accents, those shift in bar and meter, in elements like we've talked about, these big chords that needs time to resonate before you can have the answer to the question, if you consider it to be a question and answer. Those things, they get imbalanced. Then this cantabile middle section. So it's a story that you're telling, and if it goes too fast, then often the story gets a little bit under the speed and under the so it's not always very, very, very clear how fast exactly, but the strange thing is that once you are really developing a kind of habit in thinking in this way, that process goes very fast, and you come very fast to a kind of understanding that's always centered around an idea of this tempo ordinario. And it's not that you're looking for that, but it's hard to explain. I should reflect on that a little bit more. When I was playing Haydn, it's too long ago again, but we will have to do some Haydn projects. Just playing through all the sonatas, it was remarkable that all the tempo that you take just by sight reading are basically in the same area. So, and it feels very natural after a while. Anyway, I just check if I missed something here in.
Yes, Seth asked a question. What's your take on adding ornaments? Do you see that?
So Seth, I don't see the question actually.
Seth Dempsey, right under Tantrika.
Oh yeah, so Seth Dempsey. What's your take on adding ornaments or improvisation in Beethoven's music? Yeah, certainly, do it. Certainly music before 1800. So, in Mozart there's no discussion about that. If you feel to add ornaments, certainly in repetitions, I think it was just practice of the time. The so-called, what I would say, finished score is something that Beethoven will develop. By the way, if you look to Mozart, we have ornamented editions from his own manuscript. So it was a practice of only noting down the basic thing. With Beethoven, it changes, and it's difficult to say, and I don't have the absolute answer, but my take on that is that if you go to the later, no, let's say 1815, 1820, you start reading comments also like by Schindler, by the way, who was really at the end of that period. You should always remember that. Commenting on people who are adding ornaments. So they will start saying that Beethoven, if he played his own music, never added or almost never added something, which is also in the context of the time a practice that still was there. So they are actually, that's how I think, commenting on people who still were doing it as if they were playing at Mozart's time. And I believe there is a certain truth in that if you look to Beethoven's later works, you see more and more ornaments that he is writing in full. And so either you play that, or you say that's an ornament, I'm going to shift to my own ones. And for me personal, it feels also natural in a way that the later you take Beethoven, the lesser you need or you have the feeling of adding something. I hope that makes sense, the answer. So, but if you would add an ornament in a work where I wouldn't add an ornament, I wouldn't mind. I mean, and they wouldn't mind either, I think. But there was a reaction, also Leopold Mozart reacting to people who are over ornamenting pieces they were playing. And so that's the difficulties in reading sources. If you ask me personally, that was my answer. But if you ask what's written about that, it's difficult because you have to place all those sources in the context of the time. If someone writes about a performance of a performer playing Beethoven with way too many ornaments, it might be just the case that he has just overdid it or not in a very good way. But the thing is that we only have done that small letter, which is saying everything and nothing at the same time. But I would not add more ornaments towards the later works of Beethoven. I think he goes to a very complex way of writing. But at the early works, if you go to Opus 2, you see a lot of added ornaments by himself. And so my friend Miklos Pani, he's very great in doing this, and he's not doing it with. He doesn't play Beethoven too much, but if he plays C.P.E. Bach, it's hard to tell if he's playing an ornament or a kind of improvised ornament that's from his hand or from C.P.E. Bach's hand. So it depends also on your background and your experience level. I'm not doing that too much. So hope that answers your question a little bit. Yeah, I read some from Brian and Bruce about tempo and playing too fast. You know, what I'm doing now on the channel sometimes is a really kind of rigid system in a way that if like I will be playing the Grave or the Pathétique in full, which was a really fun experiment, but I'm doing myself no favor in trying those things out because tempo indication is really important. We have been talking on that. It's the measurable thing within the movement of a piece, and if you change the tempo, everything changes. Your movement changes, your way of playing changes, the color changes, the effect changes. So I wouldn't set that as an example. I would, if you're interested in coming as close to the voice of the composer, it's for me a mystery though that those metronome markings are considered have so little attention, because those metronomes, they were ticking at those speeds, at those pianos. So we can neglect them, what's actually happening. And I know if you say that to people, they don't like that hearing, but that's the fact. nobody's playing in metronome numbers. Nobody. Even if, like for instance, I read a comment on Andras Schiff, which I admire. I mean, Andras Schiff is a really great musician. He's playing in a different world than I do, but I don't mind. He gave some beautiful lectures on Beethoven sonatas, which are really worthwhile watching. But on the Hammerklavier, he kind of joking about broken metronomes, which is true. I mean, that's stupid, but he's playing bits and pieces of the Hammerklavier in 130H, which he can do. He has a technique to do it, and the Hammerklavier is playable. But then he makes a recording in 104. And I think, why then? I mean, so, but other than that, to answer that question as another question, I think if you perform music, the story, it should always be clear. If it goes so fast that you have difficulties in keeping up for yourself as a musician and understanding really every note in its place, or that you have the feeling that you have to keep pushing to reach time after time that level of speed, I think you're on the wrong track. Whatever take or whatever perspective you choose, go always for the understandable the performances, and then you will see that the character of the piece often changes for the better, but it doesn't come overnight. If you really have to change a lot of that, being inspired by metronome numbers or not, because that's it, it's an inspiration, it's nothing else than that, it needs time, also for me. Okay, I'm rambling really a lot. It's because I'm a little bit tired, I think. Taster Juster, the sforzando on beat 3 on the end, I think must be a little stronger on the following beat. Yeah, that's possible. I must say for that if you play that on my clavichord, the tenor part and the alt here is so strong that I don't have really much margin anymore. If I would play even stronger, it probably would be over the tone. So I'll see how I did it on the recording, because in these demonstrations it's sometimes hard to be very careful. Yeah, you're right. I could give more emphasis on the third beat and then just again fall back on the first. That's great remark. Thank you for that. See if I can do in the editing something. No, I really don't know how I played it on the recording. So great, John. I would also bring out the third, then the third, then second beats lead up to the F in bar 228. Let's see. You mean 225, 6, 7, 8. And then we are here. I'm just trying to understand. Bring out the third, and then second beats lead up to the fortissimo. That's possible. I think you mean like this. Sorry. So that is can be. But indeed, this accent on the third beat is a great remark. Accent there and falling back, which is again difficult because the clavichord is sounding so strong there. It's impossible to. On the piano it will work. Piano, literally. Okay. So, I hope I didn't miss anything. Anyway, it was an important session, I think, and I've learned some things myself, which is not surprisingly, because I'm learning all the time, often remarks you're making, because this interaction is of course great, and in fact the recording is also great. And if you are not doing that, you have to start maybe not making a YouTube channel, but just listening you play, because it's constant feedback. But that scherzo, I must say, it's a difficult piece also for me. And I've just recorded for YouTube. I'm happy with the recording. I played it today in concert in Brussels, and I was more happy with my performance there than with the recording. So it's developing. And that's also the great thing of having these project months. I'm really not forcing myself not to make recordings that I release on CD or vinyl afterwards. I make re-recordings for the Munich sonatas. I was really pleased with the result, certainly of some, but I've only recorded them in half speed. That's typical. That's a nice element, half speed on my tape recorder, which is not the best quality. It's overkill for YouTube though. And I just erased those recordings, not on my computer, but the analog recordings are erased because the pieces develop. YouTube, I give my best, and it's a great laboratory for experiments. So, that's to close the evening. I thank you all for being here, as always, really great. We will have these masterclasses live, probably every 2 weeks. Something can come up, but then I will announce certainly on Facebook. Next one will be in 2 weeks on the Opus 14 number 1, first movement, I believe, and then we have another one 2 weeks later on part 2 and 3. That will be an exciting month, because this Opus 14 number 1 is a really mind-blowing piece. Works also great on clavichord. I have to change some things here, but I will be talking on that. We have recording sessions live. 3, I believe, if I'm right, we're going to record that sonata in 3 parts. So 3 Thursday nights at 9:30 p.m. Central European Summertime. And I don't know for sure if next Thursday is the first one, but you can find it in the first scheduled video. And I will make also the events on YouTube live, so you can check always there when the live streams are up. Okay, thanks again to all of you. I wish you a very good night or a very good day, depending on the place of the planet where you live, and I hope to see you very soon again. Bye.